Okay, so you want to go on crusade. Picture it. A bishop preaching in the town square, promising that everyone who takes up the cross and marches to Jerusalem walks away with their sins wiped clean, no matter what they've done. Banners snap in the wind. Neighbors you've known your whole life are sewing red crosses onto their tunics. You can already feel the road under your feet, the gates of the holy city swinging open. Your name remembered forever as one of the men who took it back for Christ. Then you open a real financial record from 1096. Godfrey of Bouillon, Duke of a wealthy border territory, one of the great lords who led the First Crusade, didn't march off on faith alone. Before he left, he sold his own family fortress, the Castle of Bouillon, to the Bishop of Liège for 4,000 silver marks and a pound of gold, not to buy glory, to buy passage. That's the real version of this story, not what the preachers sang, what the ledgers said. So here's your first correction. Going on crusade sounds like joining an army. It wasn't. There was no royal paymaster, no standing quartermaster corps, no state treasury with a line item for liberate Jerusalem. A crusade was a self-funded armed pilgrimage, and every knight, count, and duke who took the cross was personally on the hook for financing his own private war from his own pocket for years. We'll measure everything in one honest unit, the day wage of an ordinary laborer, worth roughly 2 silver pennies in 12th century England. Not marks, not basins, not gold pounds. A single day of a working man's labor. It's the only number that won't lie to you about scale, and you'll see why it matters as the figures get bigger. Start with what it actually cost just to show up. A knight needed a war horse bred and trained for war, mail armor, a sword and lance, a squire to maintain it all, spare mounts for the road, and months of food for men and animals alike. Historians estimate the full package ran to 4 or 5 times a knight's entire annual income before he'd fought a single battle. Godfrey's fortress sold for 4,000 marks. At 2 pence a day, that's something like 3 centuries of one laborer's working life, spent just to get a single lord and his household as far as the coast. And the coast was only the beginning. Someone still had to get an army across the sea. In 1201, the leaders of what became the Fourth Crusade signed a contract with Venice, 85,000 marks for ships, crews, and a year of provisions to carry the army to Egypt. Venice didn't have that fleet sitting in a harbor somewhere. The Republic cleared its shipyards and built it from nothing. A full year of national shipbuilding capacity gambled on a promise. Recurring costs never stopped once you sailed. Soldiers and sailors were paid in basins, roughly 1 gold basint a month for a common man-at-arms. And that wage ran whether you were fighting, waiting, or slowly starving in a stalled siege camp outside some city that refused to fall. Horses needed reshoeing. Food had to be bought or foraged in hostile country at hostile prices. Every extra month at sea or on the march burned through the war chest a little further, whether or not anything was actually being won. So who actually paid for all this? Not plunder, not at first. The real backbone was tax. In 1188, England and France both levied what became known as the Saladin Tithe. 10% of a subject's income and movable goods, assessed parish by parish, collected by priests, sheriffs, and Templar treasurers, with prison or excommunication waiting for anyone caught cheating the assessors. England's share alone brought in something like £82,000. Call it tens of millions of laborer days of value, extracted in a single tax season to fund men who, conveniently, were themselves exempt from paying it. Here's your second correction. That tithe wasn't a religious offering, whatever it was called. It was one of the first documented income taxes in English history, with auditors, assessment juries, and enforcement teeth, a real state financial apparatus, built and tested inside a holy war. And here's where it starts making money for people who never picked up a sword. The Knights Templar, sworn to personal poverty, ran something closer to a continental bank than a monastery. A pilgrim could deposit his savings at the temple in London and collect the equivalent in Jerusalem months later on a letter of credit. No cash on the road, no target painted on his back for bandits. Royal treasuries used the same network for the same reason. One surviving record shows the Templars moving 40,000 marks in a single transfer on behalf of the English crown. The poor Knights of Christ were, within a century of their founding, running Europe's most trusted long-distance payment system. Here's what breaks it: that 85,000 mark contract with Venice. When the fleet was finished and ready in 1202, barely a third of the army the Crusaders had promised actually showed up to pay their share. They were roughly 34,000 marks short, with a fully built, fully crewed fleet sitting idle, and Venice out a year's shipbuilding capacity it couldn't get back. The Doge didn't forgive the debt. He converted it, work it off, by capturing the rival port of Zara for Venice first, then Constantinople. The most infamous detour in crusading history started as an unpaid invoice. Good year, bad year. The difference was everything. The First Crusade actually took Jerusalem in 1099, and its survivors split real plunder and real land. Minor knights walked away as lords of brand new territories, a payoff worth far more than anything waiting for them at home. The Second Crusade, half a century later, ended in retreat outside the walls of Damascus. No city taken, no plunder divided, thousands of men and most of the war chest simply gone, and families back home holding mortgaged land with nothing to show for it. Same upfront investment, same logic. One paid out enormously, one didn't, catastrophically. So who actually got rich off 2 centuries of holy war? Not the knights. Most who survived came home poorer than they left, and plenty never came home at all. Not the foot soldiers, paid a bezant a month for the privilege of dying overseas. It was Venice. The Republic never needed to win Jerusalem. It needed ships built, debts owed, and ports controlled. And when the Fourth Crusade couldn't pay its bill, Venice collected in the one currency that actually compounds: trade rights. Out of the wreckage of Constantinople came Venetian trading quarters, tax-free ports, and shipping lanes that made the Republic the dominant power in Mediterranean commerce for the next 300 years. The Knights fought for the Holy Land. Venice just kept the receipt.